Welcome to 802 Garage. Today on Don't Pay a Mechanic, I'm going to show you how to change an alternator on most Subaru vehicles. These steps are similar for most cars, but a lot of the times the alternator will be on one side of the engine bay or the other due to a transversely mounted engine, or they'll be in a different location on the front. The other difference is that Subaru uses a two-belt system to power its accessories. Many other cars use this technique as well, but there are also two-belt systems and serpentine belt systems which use a spring-loaded tensioner to keep the belt taut. Just keep that in mind if you plan on digging in to change your alternator. The only tools you should need to complete this job are a 12mm wrench and 12mm and 10mm sockets on ratchets. Start by removing these cover bolts with a 10mm socket. If this hasn't been done in a long time, you'd be best to soak them in some penetrating lubricant before moving forward. These nuts and bolts are easy to lose, so a magnetic parts tray is never a bad idea. This cover over the air conditioning pulley should come off simply, but in order to get this left cover off, you will need to loosen the alternator bolt. You flip it up, slide it out. You can see it's forked right here. Before moving forward, I want to note you are going to have to retension this belt after you replace the alternator. One of the easiest ways to do that is going to be to get a feel for how tight it is before you replace the alternator and try to match that when you're done. There are devices which measure the exact amount of pressure for the right amount of deflection, but I don't have one of those. I've always just eyeballed it and it's worked out fine. If it starts to squeak, just tighten it a little bit. This one actually looks a tiny bit loose if you ask me. To continue, I recommend loosening this tensioner bracket bolt and then lowering the tensioner so that it'll be easier to put the new alternator in and you won't be fighting the belt. By loosening that, it allows the tensioner bracket to slide up and down when you spin this screw. You should be able to see that the alternator is lowering. I think that's going to be enough. Now you can continue just to remove the bracket bolt. And that allows the left side of the alternator to swing freely. Slide the belt off of the pulley and out of the way for now. Everyone's going to tell you you should disconnect the battery before this step as well, so I might as well too. Disconnect the battery before this step. There's a clip on the left side of the alternator that has to be undone. It's simply a press in and pull out. There you go. You can see the cold weather managed to break my clips, but it still just presses in like that. And you are going to need to remove this little cover on top. And you can see a 10mm bolt right there. Take that off. Remove the wiring. And just try to stick it out of the way. The last step to getting out the old alternator is to remove this bolt that holds in the right side. Before it comes all the way out, you'll probably want to hold on to the back here so that you don't lose that underneath the engine intake. Like I'm trying to do right now. You can see it's a small bracket like this that was in this orientation and acts as the nut for that large bolt. You should now be able to pull this bolt free. If not, using the threads to your advantage can help. It's quite a long bolt. Finally, swing the alternator up. Pull it away from the air conditioning compressor, and there you have your old alternator. I want to note that this is also the perfect time to change your alternator and power steering and air conditioning belts. So if you check their condition before you do this job, you'll know if you should replace them. It's also a great time to check this little guy down here, which is your oil pressure sending unit, and they love to leak on Subarus and get all over the top of your engine. This one looks fine, so I'm not going to replace it. Putting in the new alternator is just the opposite of the reverse, but before showing you the entire process, I want to note a few things. Make sure you have this bracket that goes on the back of the alternator in the correct orientation, like this. You have to do that so that the tabs catch on the right positions and keep it in place. Make sure when you put on this front bracket that it's also in the upright orientation. This is actually used to pull the engine, but you want to make sure that this little tab is resting against the bottom of the alternator arm. And lastly, you'll see that I like to put a little bit of anti-seize on all my bolts because this job is so much easier the next time if you do so. You can see how easily all my bolts loosened up. I know this alternator doesn't look quite as nice as the one I'm replacing, but this is an OEM Subaru alternator, whereas the other was a $100 alternator from an unknown brand. It did last me 3.5 years, but often finding a used replacement OEM alternator is going to be cheaper, and it may even last longer. Now I'm just going to show you installing the replacement alternator. And there you have it, a freshly swapped alternator. Remember, don't pay a mechanic when you can do it yourself. Everybody, look at this nice scenery. Please like and subscribe, it really helps me out. Leave a comment below if you think I did something right, wrong, or otherwise. I really like talking to my viewers. And just once again, thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.